Hey guys, welcome back to Code with Kazi. Today we will create some reusable form components. So let's first check what are reusable components. So when we design interfaces, we break down the common design elements such as buttons, form fields, layout components, etc. into reusable components with well-defined interfaces. That way, the next time you need to build some UI, you can write much less code. That means faster development time, fewer bugs, and fewer bytes down the wire. So let's get started with the form components. In this tutorial, we will only create form components such as button, input text, and text area, drop downs, checkboxes. So we will create all these all these form fields, and we will create a one consolidated form component which have all these fields integrated into that, which will handle all the validations, which will check all the values which is coming, validate it, and then send it back to the parent component, which will be calling the form component. So in this way we will only need to pass some one JSON format, or JSON object of fields rather, and that will generate our whole form. And yeah, so we will be building a reusable form component which have all these form types. So let's get started with this. So I have an empty project here, empty React project, new created. I just have created one folder which is library. So our UI components will be in component folder. So for me it is in it should be in library. So I have created a library folder. There is one component folder and then one utility folder. In utility folder I have created one validator file which will have all our validation functions, and one validate input function which take all the validators we pass to the component, or say form component. So it will check all the validations there, and it will send the error accordingly. So if that validation has if that field has the error, it will send the error, or else it will return just false. And what I did is, like, I am also expecting message what should be displayed for the error message. So let's suppose somewhere we need to for email error, we need to show like this field is, the email is not valid, or somewhere we can use some other message. So it gives the flexibility of showing those messages as well. So I have created these validator functions, and this will uh, this will help us validate our all of inputs. So in this first video we will create an input field, and we will create other fields in other future videos. So we'll start with input fields now. So let's create one directory in components where we will name it as input field, and we will create index.js. And so we will create a functional component here. We will not be going to the class component, as we will not be using much of state and all. If we will be only needing one state for displaying the error message. So we will be using React hook for that. So we have only one field to save in the state. So this way our component will be much lighter than the class component, which will increase the performance of the application. So let's import React from React const input field, and yeah, so we will export default input field here. We will return. So I am a Bootstrap fan, so I'll be installing Bootstrap. I haven't installed it yet, but yeah, I will do that. along with Bootstrap, we will be needing jQuery to support Bootstrap and Popper.js as well. So let it get installed. Meanwhile, we will create our input component basic structure. So I will be needing the form group from Bootstrap. Yeah. Here we will have a label HTML4. So let's say give this ID of app input. App input field would be much better. So here we will display our label if label is provided, and we will have our input here. So type will also take from the props. So let's keep it text now for starting, and we will give this class of control. Form control, we will have placeholder. Yeah, so just keep it as it is for now. We will have an on change handler. So this will also we will handle in our function. So we will create one function for this. So we can name it as handle change. Here we will create that function. So it will take event. We will destructure value from it, and we have the value there. So now what we need to do is we need that validate input function which we have here. So we will be needing this function to validate the input here, and if any error occurs, we will save that to state and we will display that error message, and if not, we will just send the value to the on change handler of the parent component. So let's create an object of a variable of error. Here we will have to pass validators and value as we have described here. So it will have an array of validators and we will have the value. So for now I will destructure all the props here. We will be needing value as well. So let's suppose we have we call this component in any other component, like we will be in calling this in form component. So we will send the value from there. So this will be an uncontrolled component which cannot, it does not have its own value stored in the state. So it will get value from the other component. So it is uncontrolled component. We will have this value. We will be having label. We will have placeholder. We will have validators, and we will have on change. So for now we have all these props. We will add as we grow with the application, we will add it accordingly. So sorry, for here we will print that label, but only if label received, then only we will print that label, or else it will be it will show nothing there. And here we will have placeholder. Here one more thing I have forgotten here is type. So let's suppose we have an input, we need an input type of email, or maybe URL, or maybe number. So we will have one single input field component which can handle all these input types. So now we will just replace this from text to type, and for the better readability of the code, we will make it to multi-line, so this way we can read it better. Yeah, so we have our input type, placeholder, handle on change. I will also need prop types, so we can validate props as well. So we'll install that. Meanwhile we'll just set up it. So from prop types, yeah, so we have all these initial setup done. Now what we will do is we will give prop types definition here, so we can have the prop types validation. And yeah, so I have what else we need to do in this component is we need to complete this handle change function, and we need we are currently working on prop types. So first we will complete this prop types, and then we will go again with the handle change. So first is value. We need it as prop types dot string, and it is an optional field, so we don't have it as required. We need prop types label as string, and this will also not be required. I mean it won't be mandatory. Placeholder will be also be same, and in fact validators will also be same, but this will be an array, prop types array. We need type, and this can also not be mandatory, but yeah, on change is mandatory, so we need this as required. So on change would be required, and rest all fields are not mandatory. So for not mandatory files, so like optional fields, we will be giving a default value, so it should not break if those fields are not received. So value would be a blank string, same for label, same for placeholder, and for type we will have a default of text, and validators would be a blank array. So we have mentioned all these files, so this is a required field, so we don't need a default props for this, and rest all 5 we have given a default prop as well. Yeah, so now let's continue with handle change, and before that we will just create an state object for error. So this is hooks definition, so we will be having error as null as initial state, and we what we did here is we have an object of error, so it's a state value error. This is the handler, so this function, this will be the handler. Maybe you can we can say a callback or a function which can be used to change the values for this error. And use state, we will just we have imported it from React, and it takes the initial value for error. So initially it will be null. Whenever it has any it gets any value from the validate input, so we can update it accordingly. So in this case what we need to send values anyway. If it has error or if it doesn't, we need to send that value to the parent component. So we will call on change, and we will send value. And this error, what should we do? Maybe we can just wrap this inside set error function. So if it has any error, it will just set the error in state, and if it doesn't, it won't. It will be a false, as we return false. If it doesn't have any error, it returns as false. So let's keep this false instead of null, because if we don't have any error, we'll receive false anyway. So we can have our initial value of false there. Now here, if we got any error, so let's check if error, then we will display an error message with. So for error message, we will text attention. We will be having error dot message as we have it in all our function. So let's see what we did. So we are returning error, and then the message which is coming from the component, or from which we have already passed as a validator function or a validation object. So we will be getting all that message here. So we'll just have to check the message. We'll just have to return that message. So we will have an object of error and a message in the validate input function as a return value. So it will set the error here, and yeah, so we are almost done with the input component. Yes, we haven't added value here, so we will add a value. So input has type, value, class name, placeholder, and on change. Yeah, pretty much okay. We can also add test ID as a prop. You can take it, so that for testing. So in this series we are not covering test cases, or maybe I can create another series for that, or maybe test driven development, or maybe only writing test cases for all the components which we will create in this series. So I have not decided it yet, but yeah, we will have that. So for now, let's check our input component, how it works. For that, we need to import our Bootstrap. So let's just import it. Bootstrap test CSS, and so I have this habit of importing everything which Bootstrap gives. We need jQuery before Bootstrap here. And we need popper before Bootstrap as well. Yes, and now finally we will import our Bootstrap JS here. So we are ready with our Bootstrap imports. Let's just change a bit in our app.js. So first let's run this application. We will see a default React home page, and we will just change it and use our input component here. So once we see how it works, and then we can discuss on what all we have done in the component. I will explain every steps which I did. I have already I was already describing what all I was doing while creating that component, but again I will explain it again. So we have this default React page, so we just don't need all these here. I'll close this. We just have a Bootstrap container, CSS, or we don't need logo. Maybe we may need CSS, so let's leave it, and we don't need it here. We just delete it. So now, so I'll just give a heading h2 of reusable form component, and here we are using input component, so just input field component, and we will import it. So as we have only on change as an required field, so we are getting this on change as default input, and while I'm from my IDE. So let's give this also a handler. Sorry, handle change, maybe this will, I will have to create a function here. So what it returns, we return the value only. So we for now we are sending only the value, but when we integrate this component in our form component, we may need one more field there. So like the field name, which I will show you how we will use it when we will integrate this in form component. So for now we only check this as a value. So I'll close this, I will close this. Yeah, so we have this handler, and it will return me the value. I'll just console log it for now. I'll just console log it for now, value, and I'll create one value handler in state. So this will handle this value, let's call it, and console log it also, so we can check the what values are coming here. We will pass value as this, so we will pass this state value as this input field value, and, and what all we need placeholder, and we will give it as a placeholder as test my input field. Type would be text, and we will give label also to check all the fields. We will give all the fields which is required or which is needed to check our input field. So let's give it as username. What's just left? Validators. Yes. So this will take an array, as I have already told. First let's make it readable. Yeah. So now we will pass a validation. Here what we do is what we need to check, so we will send it as required, and we will send message. A message would be this field is required. So how this object works, so this check we define as a function. So we have all these functions defined already in validators class. We have this class in validators here, so we have this class here, and we have that required function. So now what we need, we have provided this validators are required. This will be the function which will be going to be checked, or which will be run, which function this function will run, and this will be the message which we get as an output or a returned message from the validation function if there is an error. So let's check this. let's check our component. We okay, yeah, so it was not refreshed that way, so we'll just keep this. Yeah, so let's check. So we have our placeholder label as username. We have provided label as username. We have our placeholder test my input field, so this is also working. This is a text, type text, so this should be type text. We will inspect this and check. Yes, we have this input as text. So we have checked 3 values. We can also check the validators in our dev tools. So we have validator as prop in the input field, and we have this check as a required and the message with that. So till now it looks good. We have the on change handle as handle change. We have the label placeholder text type. So we have all these. So just so let's enter any value here. So this works fine, right? So everything, every keystroke we got the value here, as we have called it an handle change function. So we have all those logged in console. So every key in every keystroke we got this value. So it was working fine. This means the handle change was working fine. Let's check the validation. So when I remove that value, the validation also worked. This field is required with, this is the message we have which we have sent in the validation message. So this is also working. So let's see if the value is changed in the state or not. It has, because we are we are able to see this error message there, and here we can also see in hooks state we have this error as true and the message returned which we have sent for the validation. So this component works fine. We have created it. So let's try it with some more input types, like email, number. So we have 2 more validations in validator, email and number. So we will create 2 more components, or maybe 2 more. We will now, yeah. So here we will give it as number. This will, yeah. So for this also we will just give as text field and text as label. Here we can give as email field as placeholder and label would be email. So let's yeah. So let's first see how all components are rendered. So we have 3 components in app component. We have the first one as text, we have that placeholder, we have the validation. Yeah, we have everything. We need to change the validation here. So we will see, check this as number, and message would be number is not valid. Here we will use email, and we will just say email is not valid. Yes. So we have the first as text and validation as required, second as number and validation as number, third as email. Sorry, I think I haven't changed the text type here. We have the email check as validator, we have the label, we have the type. We haven't checked, yeah, it was not done, sorry, my mistake. So we have the type here accordingly. So now third one is also email. Let's check it, let's inspect it as in the DOM. So yeah, we have this as email, the first second one is number, and the first one is text. So everything looks good here. Let's enter values. Let's enter first a wrong value, maybe a string. So it should It is not taking it because we have given a type number, so it won't allow me to, HTML won't allow me to enter a string. Let's change it to text and we can check our validation is working or not for this. So I have changed it as text and I will now input as a value as string. So I have got this as number. So guys, you might have noticed that we are getting the same value in all our components, because we are saving the value here once only. We are sending the same value in all the components, so that is why it is same value in every in all three fields. So maybe we can for now we can change the handlers, or maybe we can handle this function we can also create as reusable. So let's create this function also as a reusable function, because we are talking about reusability, so we may change it to reusable function as well. So let's have it as let's have it as values, and this will have an object. This will have an object, and we can give the field maybe text, number, and email. So this will be the initial value of our state. On handle change, we will pass this as a parameter. We will pass this as parameter, and here will be email. And now we will have to change these values as well. So values dot text, values dot number, and values dot email. So we have separated the state values. Now we need all these inputs, so we will have to add this as key. Now what we will do, we will check this as, set this as, let's see, I haven't done this way till now, but now this won't work in this way. So we can have a class component here, and we can have this handled very nicely. So let's create this as a class component. Component app extends component. We won't be needing this use state here. We won't be needing this const here because we have this as component. We will wrap this return inside of render function. This will, we need to pass this dot let's quickly create some states. Maybe we can have text, number, and email. So here what we will do is we will pass the key and the value accordingly. So this will take the keys from the function and it will display there. Save it as the state. So now just destructure values from this dot state. Take text, number, and email. Remove these values. So we are good to go now. So we need to remove this from all. So yes, we need to import component from React. So our component is ready. We have the app component. We have converted the app component as class component because for doing this as a reusable, we have converted it. So this handle change will be reused with all these three components now, all these three components, and we'll set the state value accordingly. So we will have all these different values stored in state and then passed down to the input component. So let's check it. Let's refresh. Yeah, so first check with the text component. This is a test. Text component is working fine. We are not I mean, we have fixed that issue. Like we were getting the same value in all components. Now it is fixed. It has only the value for that field only. Now we can so we are not able to input any invalid number, so we can have this random number, and here is also validation is also working. So we have that validation. So validation also working fine. So we have created our first input component as a reusable component successfully, and we can I can show you the state value also. So we have the state in app, we have all those states saved, and yeah, it is working fine. And we can have, so this way we can have all the input as same, because we have only created one component which was reused thrice and it was working fine. Yes, so let's just recap what all we have done. So we have created our input field component as a functional component because we were handling only one state here, the error. And what we did, we created the input field component, we destructured the props. We had props as value, label, placeholder, validators, type, and on change. We have initialized our error object in our component. We created our handle change handler, which takes the value, which sets the error accordingly and send the value here. So why we send the value, and whenever we have when we have the error, when we get an error in the component, or maybe for that field, because we are not handling values in this component, we are sending value back to the parent component. If we don't send that value, it won't be displayed on the component here. So because we need to pass down that value again, we have to send it back to the parent component, as we have created an uncontrolled component here, which can be controlled from the parent component, which is actually controlled from the parent component. So so in this case we are sending the value anyways, and we have that error here. So all after this, yeah, we have the check for label. If we receive label, we will display this HTML. If we don't receive it, we will not display this. We have input, HTML input here. So we have a type. So we have type as a prop, so that we can support different types of input. We have a value, we have set our class name, we have the placeholder, and the on change, and same with error as well. Same with error. So it is like the label. If error is there, we will show this. So you have seen that validation message there. And we have given the prop types, we have defined the prop types, and then we have given the default props for all the optional fields, so that our application should not break if we don't send the optional field. it shouldn't break the application. So that is why we have given a default props here. One thing we haven't checked, the label. We are passing label everywhere, and we were able to see it as also. So now let's remove it from here, and also the placeholder. So let's check what happens. So we cannot see that label here, and we also not seeing placeholder. Anyways, placeholder was I removed placeholder just to show you that using default props, we are the component is not breaking. I mean, application is not breaking without that prop not being passed. So that is why I removed it from there, and also the label, and we have checked it is working fine. So in next video I will be creating more different type of components. Thank you for watching, guys. Please, if you like this video, please do share, comment and subscribe to my channel.